Committee of the Whole for the City Council of Highland Park, Illinois, May 28, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Littleworth.
Here.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Rotary.
Here. We are squeaking by with a quorum, and we need to establish that that is Councilmember Stone. Let me think, what's a good question? Where were you earlier this afternoon?
When I spoke with you, I was on the river trail.
Thank you, that's you, okay. Thank you for joining us. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole held May 13th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
The minutes are approved. We have one item tonight on our Committee of the Whole scheduled business, and that's the library expansion project update. We'd like to welcome Carol Wolf and Heidi Smith. Take it away.
Great. Mayor, I'll just make a couple of introductory comments, and then I'll turn it over to our library team. So as you indicated, we have one item on the Committee of the Whole agenda this evening. Want to just make sure that we are all aligned that the presentation that the library team will present this evening precedes our formal planning process. The library professionals are going to provide an overview about the background leading up to the library expansion project. As you may recall, many years ago, we were working with the library on what they had presented their case for space. And so that began the initial discussions of a proposed expansion project. So they'll provide a history about that. They will provide information as it relates to various options that were evaluated in terms of the expansion, consideration to expand the property east, south, as well as west. They will provide an overview of the proposed plans and talk about the timeline for implementation. Do want to share with you that as a staff, we have not done a zoning analysis at this time, again, because this is very preliminary as it pertains to our planning process, but our team has been working closely with the library and guiding them through their process, as well as a significant public engagement and the public feedback that they will share with you this evening. And so with that, I will turn it over to Director Smith and Vice President Wolf.
Right. I'm sorry. It's going to be one of those nights. We're going to be tripping over each other. Thank you for having us. I'm Carol Wolf, Vice President of the Highland Park Public Library Board, and many of you know Heidi Smith, our Executive Director. So we're going to give you kind of the latest update of what's happening with our 2025 expansion. As far as background, Gita mentioned that this goes back quite a long way, but in order to establish the goals that we wanted for expansion, we relied a lot on library patron feedback. We've listened to the community members who use the library and what they want and what they need. In 2017, Williams Architects conducted a complete facility needs assessment. This included public surveys, so we also got public comment then. It let us know the limitations of the current spaces that we have. Also, some comparisons to neighboring libraries, which, just to let you know, our youth services area is smaller than all of our neighboring libraries, and it really does not allow us to provide a full level of service that we want to our community. To give you the numbers, our capacity in youth services is 0.19 square feet per capita. Deerfield is at 0.36, and Northbrook is at 0.53. In 2020, we did an interior renovation and reconfiguration to repurpose the youth services space and to address some of the needs that came out of the needs assessment. We did not add any square footage at that time. In 2021, the library board and the library staff and administration completed a 3-year strategic plan. As part of that, we had a community survey and focus group, so again, we got community feedback through that. We've also relied heavily on staff input based on their observations and their expertise, and we came up with 8 priorities for this expansion, which the library board then prioritized to 5. There we go, and here they are. So the first item is accessibility. We will have an ADA compliant elevator and restrooms. As the library, everyone is welcome in the library, and we want to be sure that we make it easy for many of our patrons. The elevator will have room for a wheelchair and a caregiver, or a parent and a stroller, which we don't have now. It will also access all 3 floors of the library. Youth services will be expanded. It will provide more space for seating, for play, for programs, for reading, all kinds of activities that will allow us to have more toys in there for our children. The third item is historical preservation. I know the council has heard quite a bit about the current archives and the limitations we have in the space that it's in. The expansion will provide for temperature and humidity control in the archives. It will provide elevator accessibility, and also we'll have a room now for patrons who request materials to view the requested materials. Our next item is meeting spaces. We will have the ability for a larger, more flexible room that will hold up to 175 people. Often our current auditorium, which is
87.
87, oh, I was over, holds 87 people, which is not large enough for many of our programs. So we tend to move our programs to adult services, which works well for the program, but for the people who might want to use the services around that, it compromises their ability to use that when there's something going on. So we'll have this new space for programs, for concerts, and for other types of things. Our 5th item is a creative workshop, and we will create or have a maker space in as part of the expansion. This provides cutting-edge equipment such as 3D printers, laser cutters, maybe some sewing machines, and provides our community with the opportunity to learn new skills with the support of the library staff, and hopefully to engage and collaborate with others who might have similar interests. As I mentioned earlier, we said we had come up with 8 priorities. The 3 that are not listed, one is parking, which always comes up as a need when we talk to the community. Recently, a parking study was conducted, and given the way things are now, our parking needs were determined to be sufficient for where we are. We also initially had on there a larger digital media lab. After talking with the library staff, we determined that was not a priority at this time. And we had separately listed out a large and medium-sized meeting rooms. What we've done is combine them into one flexible space that will be able to be divided into 2 rooms if necessary.
Thank you. No,
Okay.
wonderful. Okay. So as you can imagine, with most construction projects, there are 3 factors that the library board has worked to balance. One being funding, both in considering the capital investment itself and effects on our long-term operation costs. They've also been working to balance function, that we need to make sure that spaces effectively enhance the services that the community is asking for, as well as improve the overall user experience. The third big one is form. We need to make sure we complement the look of the existing building and the campus. So funding, function, and form leads us right into talking about the space and how we've approached putting an addition on the current building. So you're all looking this way. Some of
You
you
can
are
look that
looking
way,
this way.
whatever.
Okay. If I say left and right, it works for everybody. Great. Okay. Okay. So the first thing we looked at was, can we go up? That was the shortest conversation ever. No, we were not able to go up, unfortunately. The large open expanse of the library, that's the adult services. It's built on pillars with parking underneath. It cannot support a second floor. So we did look at that. Gita mentioned we looked to the south, kind of where that lower chunk is. You see the little circle in the middle. I could use my mouse. Look at that. Right there. And with this, it would make half of what we're doing below grade. And we already have some moisture issues, so we didn't feel like that was in the best interest of serving the community's needs. We also looked at going east into this lot right here, and upon further study, made the determination that going east would require a larger and more costly expansion. I'll tell you why. We would need to relocate our youth services department to that side of the building and increase it in size, rather than the alternative, which I'll talk about next, of adding on to youth services. In addition, in relocating youth services, we looked at youth services to see, well, maybe that could be the large meeting room. But unfortunately, it's full of pillars and would not serve well as the large meeting room. So, in terms of how much it would cost to build it, in discussion with the architects, an expansion to the east would require that the building join up with that adult services on stilts. And they said that would be a challenging in and of itself. In addition, we would require an additional elevator on that side. So some of these things would drive up the cost to build these requirements, as well as the required square footage. Lastly, we felt that it would be more expensive to operate, that if you had a space over here, you would likely need a third entrance and therefore an additional service desk. We're open 69 hours a week, and staffing that desk would increase the cost to operate. The last thing I'll mention about going east is that when we looked at how it could lay out, all of these obstacles aside, we said, well, let's see how it lays out. Maybe it'll be amazing. And a lot of what it did in creating kind of this U-shaped facility made for a long walk between some of the various service areas. So then we said, okay, let's look west, right here. And in looking west, we feel that we found a better balance of funding, function, and form. I want to go to the next slide. So here's an aerial view of the site plan, and this white section is what our proposed western addition would look like. So I want to talk about a few things we think this has going for us, and then we can talk about a few of the concerns. So in terms of putting the addition here, it puts the additional space for youth services right where it needs to be. This is our current youth services area. It also makes this supplemental entrance close to parking across the street in the metro lot and in the city lot, which is up here. We felt that overall it improved the cost-benefit analysis for some of the reasons I mentioned before. But what it does is it minimizes the green space to the west of the library. So from my perspective, it makes it that much more important that in service of our community, we look at how these green spaces could serve. Speaking of all of this, I want to express the library's gratitude to the city and the Park District for their support as we explore this project. There's a cooperative conversation going between the City Park District and library for transfer of property. This right here where we said, wouldn't that be great to put the expansion right there? That's Park District property. And we really appreciate their openness and their facilitation of those discussions. The overarching goal being to ensure that the publicly owned properties are best aligned with community needs. They've been absolutely fantastic. I want to point out that this west lawn here would be reduced. There would be approximately a 25-foot setback from the sidewalk, which I'm trying to point at here. And if you want to eyeball it, it lines up with the edge of the section for the sculpture. If you've been on Laurel walking by, and there's a beautiful lilac bush here, and there's a lovely sculpture. See that round edge? That's where you could kind of visualize, let's say as you're walking by, where the end of the building would be. So I want to leave it on this slide for another minute to just talk a little bit about how we want to serve the community and how the library's property connects with these adjacent public properties. If this becomes a beautiful park for passive recreation, we want it to be easy for people to get to it. We also want people to be able to get to the Stoopy Cabin, Laurel Park, the Rose Garden, and this area here. So we're looking at having a survey completed of the surrounding areas so that any grading that we do in doing the work here only supports, only improves ADA accessibility for the community to all the surrounding spaces. We won't be able to achieve that for all the spaces with this project, but we'll make sure we don't do anything that makes it any harder, only easier.
Okay. We have been working on public engagement since we started all of this. We have a project e-newsletter that goes out with updates. I know the City Council has signed up to receive that. Many members of the community have signed up to receive that. In February, on February 27th, we held a community meeting at the library. Prior to the meeting, we mailed notice to all the properties within 800 feet of the library. We put an invitation in the Highlander and various other e-news communications. We had a really great turnout. Mayor Rotering was there. We had a tornado warning in the middle of our meeting where we all had to go to an interior part of the library basement, which actually I think was quite educational for many of the people who were there to kind of see what that space was like and how do we really work and things like that. But we were able to complete the meeting. We had a lot of great feedback from the meeting. We've created a website, which is reimaginehppl.info. The recording of that presentation at the meeting is on the website, as is a section on frequently asked questions, which is updated regularly. And we have received feedback from people who have watched it and again, people who were in person. We have been displaying the images of the design concept in the library to solicit community feedback. And we are also, during scheduled programs, continuing to inform patrons that we're planning on an expansion, encouraging them to sign up for the e-newsletters, to visit our website. So the community feedback has been very helpful. We've tried to address all the issues. A few weeks ago, we met with the architects to pick our stone selection for the exterior of the building. And I would say that community feedback really guided us in the direction we chose. There were a lot of comments on that, and we tried to ensure that people will be happy with what we've decided. So we're going to share these updated images with you tonight, the first time you and the public have seen them. And then we will update all of our resources within the next couple of weeks with these new images.
I get this really fun part now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure to highlight the 5 priorities that we mentioned. This is going to be a whirlwind tour of what the renovated and expanded spaces will look like, but we can always come back to these slides. Don't worry about it. So our lower level entrance right here will have now a fully ADA accessible elevator right there upon entry. Our auditorium space is located right here, and that floor will be leveled, and it would become the maker space, the artistic studio. We are really excited about that. For the main floor, now you can kind of see what we were looking at with the aerial. This right here is the addition. So our youth services would remain, which makes kind of this C shape. We'd add a marketplace for new materials to lead people through this space and into the area where we would have our 175-seat program room that will be divisible, have adjacent toilet rooms that are fully ADA accessible. I love saying that. And we'll also have the option to block off this space so that we have flexibility should we want to have a program before or after hours, such as the library serving as a polling place. Sky's the limit for what we could do with that. And again, adjacent to the parking just across the street. This is all youth services here in blue. These would be the addition rooms right there. So let's see, I covered the meeting room, I covered youth services. Here's where the elevator comes up. We talked about makerspace. And next on the list is the archives, which is actually upstairs. I want to point it out. It's right here on the second floor of the library in the original wing of the library. And the space really, if you put a line across right there, that's its current space. And we're going to almost double it and improve, as Carol mentioned, the humidity and temperature controls. I want to note that, I'm going to go back up here. In increasing space for programs by 50% and creating a whole new service in our makerspace, the library has outlined a staffing plan that would increase the library's overall FTE by 3 over 3 fiscal years. So that will be a part of our budget presentation to council, including what that looks like for 26 and 27.
Possible to ask a few questions now, or you want to wait?
Do you want to give your full presentation and then do questions, or do you want
Just
questions
like
as we go
2
through?
more minutes, and then I can scroll back to
Perfect.
anything you want.
No,
Absolutely.
write it down.
Okay, get ready. Here's the updated exterior facade images. Yay, it looks so good. So I've learned a lot about stonemason terminologies, and right here is the original building. This is where the 2 buildings will meet. This is the addition. And if you're very familiar with our beautiful Gothic library, it's a limestone that's been chiseled by hand and arranged in what they call an ashlar pattern. Totally new for me. I know, fabulous, right? It's kind of a randomized artistic pattern. Very hands-on with the stonemason. What we're looking at is a very similar stone that would be bed face rather than hand chiseled. It would be laid out, coursing in bands of various thicknesses. That's why you kind of see these lines rather than the ashlar pattern on the existing building, all meant to complement the existing, but not try to match it, because what our architects advised us of was, you will fail if you try to match, and then it'll really look funny. So we want it to look fabulous, and so this will be a traditional stacked stone. It will be sturdy, it will be beautiful. As I mentioned earlier, go on to the west elevation. This is a 25-foot setback approximately from the sidewalk here. And I think I want to go back. Sorry for the quick scroll here. But just to point out here that currently the library building, the front here on the west side, is aligned with the Stupi cabin and City Hall right there. And with the addition, it would bring it out this far. So it would kind of step back from the existing business space across the street on Laurel, and then step back further. Here, I'll show you this one. To the Stupi cabin. There's the rose garden. and City Hall is, that front is in alignment with the Stubbe cabin. So those were the things we really wanted to make sure and point out to you. We've got one more elevation, and then we'd love your questions. So this one's really fun because right here, this is the original 1930s building. This is the addition they put on in the 50s, the addition they put on in the 70s, and the proposed 2025 addition. And I think they did a splendid job making them all make sense together with the references between the windows, with keeping the shapes and the sizes proportionate. I was so impressed. This is the view from the Stubbe cabin. It won't look like this because we have, lovely trees covering this up, but we wanted to make sure you could see it. All right, and the famous thank you slide. But it doesn't mean we're done. Any questions, we're happy to help.
Great. First of all, I'm so excited. I love the library, and I'll age myself. I remember when the 70s one was built, and we were all like, what are they doing? It looks so weird. So, yeah, really appreciate the time and the care that's gone into planning this, and I know it's been over a decade in the discussions. So thank you for bringing us into the 21st century. And it's interesting, the third graders come through, and I do, ask me anything. And so one of them was like, why are you getting out of the library? And I said, well, we're not, the library is, but bigger space for the children's room. And they were like, yay! So just want to let you know, the third grade thumbs up, all about it. So
Fantastic.
yeah, thank you. Annette, I know you have some questions.
Thanks. So a couple of things. First of all, I really commend you guys. You've done a beautiful job. There's no doubt you need this space. And I think anything I've heard in the community is completely supportive of the fact that you need more space. And in saying that, I used to draw areas that had to be congruent and concise. And I like the fact, and my mother was a reference librarian, and she used to run up and down. So I know what you mean by a very long distance. So the only criticism I've heard, and it is really, it's not that it's minor, but it is the only thing that I've heard, it has been that this east view, this west view, the west view, is like the front lawn of City Hall and our area. And the 25-foot setback is not as bad as I thought it was. So I'm already feeling a little bit better, okay? I have to be honest with you. But I just wanted to understand a couple of things. So first of all, could you go back to the one with the blue line around it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in that blue line, that's without the addition, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and what is the black line? Is that the property,
Yes.
or that the library, it's the library's property?
It's
Not yet.
no,
No.
and it's
So what is the black line?
sure.
area?
So what the black line encompasses is 5 parcels of land that we're looking at in relation to the project,
Okay.
right? So these 2 are the lots to the east that were the houses. This, as I understand it, was a city parcel that the library was allowed to build on for the 70s edition. Then this larger parcel here was the library's parcel, and then this parcel here to the west is the Park District's parcel that we're requesting transition to the library for the project.
And then that square that is closest in, so it is to the west, but, okay, let's go down one more, because I think the other one shows it, this one will show it better. So the white area is the addition.
Yes.
If you took that addition, and I know I see Stubbe cabin in there, but if you took that addition and you turned it, okay, so it fit into 2 areas there, is that the area that you said is on stilts? Is that the problem with that area?
This area right here,
No, to the
No,
west of it.
this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the concerns with this area, this was an addition, a 10,000 square foot addition. It was Egbert Anderson, I think, in 2008. And back then, I believe it was a $14 million project because it comes very close to the storm sewer where it lets out into the ravine.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition, half of the added space would be below grade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we've had some water issues. And so we didn't look at that as the best option.
It's just, again, in trying to keep it concise and really close together, it just never seemed like turn the corner, or even just do it lengthwise, but,
But here.
like move it out, yeah, and do it either that way or turn it,
And this is the Stoopy cabin.
which is immovable, I take it, I don't know.
The Stoopy Cabin?
Yeah,
We're,
no.
I don't go there.
Well, I know, that's why I was like a little
For so
reluctant.
many reasons.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering, if you turned it or if you just put it down there.
Well,
but-
part of it too is the internal flow of your operations and what you're trying to connect and where the elevators are and, you know, it's easy if you're starting from scratch, but given what they currently have existing in the library, to just say we're gonna rotate, I think kind of doesn't think through the walls that they have there, the flow of traffic.
Definitely with the flow, but it also seemed like the children's area could still be over there, and it would just be about the main, I don't know,
You,
the one.
And you
room.
lose all the
the
windows.
southern view that shows the, so in the southern view, and you can see how this property, like this part of the property is lower, it goes down. That,
And that's where it would turn into.
that's where it would turn into, and it would be very expensive
The drainage over there is crazy.
yeah.
And I know from like a decade ago, having conversations about how the staff was throwing bags of kitty litter at the bottoms of the doors to kind of absorb the water that was trying to creep in. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
huge issue.
This,
I just hate to see the loss of the lawn.
I
And I
understand.
think it's a wonderful, wonderful need, and not just a desire, but a need. I understand that, but I just hate to see that whole.
The good news is you do get a whole nother park just to the east, which is currently not used whatsoever.
The two-house
The
property.
two-house park, and we talked with the park district about maybe adding like a playground over there so that you could have the library experience and playground opportunity.
We have a meeting with the Park District and the library later this week to talk about the proposed intergovernmental agreement, and then we should be
that's
bringing that
nice.
back to the council. So that'll pertain to the disposition of property on the west side
Right.
that Heidi had talked about. The Rose Garden, which is on the south of that black line that's currently owned by the
With the
Park
ravine
District.
kind of bisecting it.
And then the two properties, if you recall, that the city purchased maybe about 8 years ago.
For library use, like for parking or for expansion or whatever. Joel?
Yeah, pass it.
And Mayor, just, and you had mentioned this before, the Stoopy Cabin went through a complete renovation, historically
Yeah.
sensitive renovation, and they did install a permanent foundation
Right.
under it.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do anything with moving a building that old, and yeah, they did a lot of work there.
No, I wouldn't
It's done
wanna
well.
move it,
Just, I
believe
just
me.
wanted to, yeah, the mayor was mentioning like, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
and if
thank
I
you.
may, I think I forgot to point this out. I did it while I was practicing earlier, and then, what do they say, good dress rehearsal, bad performance. Right there, there's the Stoopy
Oh,
cabin.
that's it. Okay, and I did wanna say, I did not go to the in-person one where the mayor was, but I did the virtual tour, and I thought it was so well done. I actually sat through the whole thing and listened because it was that well done.
Thank you. I think, we share the concerns.
Right.
It is a beautiful lawn. It really is. It's not easily changed.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And, the whole Miss Nitro and all of that, and where's she going, and, yeah. So. we
That's
have-
on the work plan for CAG this year to review options, and then it'll come before the council for formal consideration.
Yumi, and then I know Kim also has some comments.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm also excited about what this will mean for the library, for the community. And I thought I remembered, I stood in for liaison Stone at the last meeting, and you briefly talked about it. You didn't show these images, but you briefly talked about it. And if I recall correctly, there was during your process, there was a little concern, thank you, about that entrance, the west entrance being mistaken for the primary entrance. And there are several issues that maybe you could address reasonably simply. For starters, having huge letters that say Highland Park Public Library is not going to help that.
Yeah.
Well, that's that's
yeah.
for purposes of this drawing.
Just for the
and
drawing,
We
yeah.
did set the doors back. I think from our original concept, we pushed it back. I mean, the great thing is that if there is an after-hours event, we have access here to close off the rest of the library and enter through here.
So let me just go through the rest of it. I was thinking, you've obviously considered that, and maybe it'll be named something like the something or other auditorium, or I'm thinking.
And that
of-
helps guide you there.
Yeah, as opposed to having the words library on it. And I do think it looks, just based on the shading, like it's maybe a very small overhang. It seems like it could be a bigger overhang. That I think would help the design. Have you gotten rid of the walkway? Well, of course you've gotten rid of it because you expanded the size, but it seems like there should be a walkway north-south. North-south from the sidewalk to, that there.
To the front?
To the front, because most of your visitors are going to be coming from parking, I would think, the library's parking and the parking lot on the north, to the north, right?
That northwest
Right,
corner.
Right, so the majority of your visitors are coming from that direction. It seems like you'll want a walkway there.
Don't you currently have one in the,
It's not, you do currently,
Yeah.
but you don't.
so you want to replicate that, because,
Okay.
you know, that's, yeah.
I'm taking
It seems like that would be helpful, as opposed to emphasizing that walkway that you're showing east, heading east to the library. I don't even know if you necessarily want that walkway, but at least minimize it if the goal is not to have it look like a primary entrance.
Makes a lot of
For
sense.
parking, I think that's really essential for people.
But I think you could minimize it. It looks pretty substantial. I think the main circulation should, because most of the visitors are coming from your parking and the north west parking lot, at least based on current usage. And I'm going to also ask have you considered the issue that, I was sort of wondering why the plan wasn't flipped, but I'm not suggesting you flip it, because that corner, if it's used, for a movie or a slideshow or whatever, the shades are going to be drawn, right? And so that is going to feel like a closed box. And I wondered why put a room that would look like a closed box with the shades drawn on that primary corner. Have you, or is it that you expect that most of your programming would not draw the shades?
Like me to speak to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we think that, films are typically once or twice a month. Presentations using the overhead projector, they might require the shades to be closed as well. But I'll tell you, one of the main reasons for this configuration, if I go back to the floor plan, it's been a while since we had looked at this, Carol, but you help me if I get it.
As opposed to taking that corner and
Right.
flipping it to the
We-
blue area? Yeah.
We had flipped them,
Yeah.
and what we had determined was this space right here will have the best view ever. It'll be like the view from this part of adult services. And I've heard some people call this the treehouse, adult services. And so one thing we talked about with the architects, we said, if a program room is in use for 3 programs a day, so maybe 4 to 5 hours a day, it's right here. And to your point, the shades may be drawn. Let's make sure that the kids who are here playing in the morning, this is the discovery room for the littles, and adjacent additional books, that they have this beautiful view. And also when we had it laid out, it didn't flow very well in terms of the traffic pattern through the lobby and then coming from the parking over here. It wasn't, we struggled with it. We struggled with it when it was here.
I guess just hopefully there's enough programming that doesn't involve, drawing the shades and closing it off, because, it's such a public corner.
Right when you
that
walk in or
you
drive
wouldn't
up.
want it to seem like a closed off
Oh,
box.
certainly.
And then I guess just little, I'm wondering if could you go to the renderings that show, that picture, so that little connecting piece right there, I'm wondering, I'm sorry, this is my only opportunity to talk about this because I can't talk about it in PDC, and if it could be, recessed and that door not look so prominent.
Actually, at a meeting on Friday, sorry, you haven't heard the surprise.
yeah.
We talked about, so that exit, there has to be an exit, a secondary exit from the second program room. We talked about moving that whole thing back at least 3 feet and having the door come this way. And then we could potentially have the second door from the story time room come the same way, and then you don't see a door. It's
So,
like
I think that whenever
perpendicular
you
here.
have those additional doors that you need for egress, since they're only to be used for emergencies, I mean,
Yes.
it would be better if it's.
Do a good
if they're
job of
recessed.
hiding them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there would be 2 here, perpendicular to this one, and then the other one's over here, on this side, hidden away.
I mean, it's
Excellent
also,
feedback.
it's just going to make the facade look better too, and also less confusing.
Add that to my notes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Kim?
Thanks. I really appreciate you taking over the couple of meetings that I wasn't able to attend and giving her input on this as well. And it looks like the video hasn't, I'm watching the video, it looks like you're still talking, I wonder.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Okay, I think that there's like a delay. The library board and Heidi have been just amazing going through this process and working with the architects, and it's been just a very impressive thing to watch as they have gone through several different iterations and taken the community's input into consideration and the needs of the library. And this plan to go west, I think, was just a simple yet really effective way to meet the needs that they needed to meet in a cost-effective way. So I'm supportive of it. I know we will find another place for Miss Nitro, and with the additional land that we've got to the east and with the rose garden and Dewey and all of that, and potential for the memorial going in this location, I think we'll be able to revitalize the front lawn area in perhaps a different configuration that will be a well-used place for the community. So thank you to Heidi and Carol for all of their efforts, because it's really been a long process and a really thorough and thoughtful one.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Tony?
So I'm very appreciative of the amount of work and effort and attention to detail that's gone into this and all the things that have had to be considered. So I don't want you to take what I'm about to say personally. I am very uncomfortable with expanding to the west, understanding how difficult it would be either to build up over the 1970s addition or to build to the east. The addition to the west eats up a lot of public space that has certain advantages over the proposed park area to the east, which is that it's central to our community and it's much more integrated into the campus that's created with City Hall and the Stoopy Log Cabin. I'm also, I understand architecturally the value of not attempting to precisely match the existing building. I sit on the Historic Preservation Commission, and that's a subject of discussion in a lot of expansions and renovations. But what we have here seems to be something between two potential solutions, either of which would be better. One would be to have a completely unmatched, extremely modern addition, somewhat along the lines of what was decided in the 70s. We're not going to match it at all. We're going to have a very distinct looking addition to the library. I wouldn't want to see that going west as we are. But at least retaining the rhythm and sense of the existing architecture. This expansion is flat, absent in detail, with massive windows, which is somewhat inconsistent with some of the interior functions. I understand the value of bringing light in, especially on a southern exposure, but where you're using areas for potentially special uses where the light has to be cut off, that could become problematic, but you've got these wonderful bump outs of things like this item halfway up on the side. On that facade, you have nothing on the west-facing side. It's just completely flat, and the only area that is largely exposed on the south side is sort of the least, that's the west side, right there. It's the least interesting part of all of the buildings, and that's been accentuated by flatness and what appears to me as incongruous architectural styles that neither complement each other nor add anything in any way to the viewer, other than you can distinguish what's the older part of the library, the secondary edition, and the principal edition. I understand the financial barriers to going upward, in addition to which you would lose the use of that area. If you were to go upward, you would have to preserve the manner of going upward that's there, which is to not have a lower floor. But I almost feel that given the centrality of the library as a historic building in our community, I would prefer to explore that, even though it's going to be a lot more expensive. If I'm correct, and maybe I'm recalling incorrectly, early on we set out certain capital projects that would be done over about a 15 or 20-year period, including the fire station, the senior center, the library. I'm not sure I remember what the other one was. But it's a major commitment by our community, and I don't want to be short-sighted. We could gain a lot more space by building up than the space that we need immediately, and that might potentially be worth spending more money to do. That's my perspective. I recognize that is not shared by a majority here, but those are my concerns.
Okay, so there's some feedback.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Can you just maybe talk about next steps in terms of Plan and Design Commission?
Absolutely. So next steps, as I understand them, is that we will be presenting the library's budget to the council in August. In July, we will be submitting our information for review by the Planning and Design Commission at a September meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have those dates right in front of me. But then the overall goal for this project is to bid it out in January of 2025 and break ground in March of 2025. We anticipate it will be an 18-month-long project. It would be completed in phases so that the library can remain open and service to the community even during the construction. So that would have all of you there for a ribbon cutting in August of 2026.
Quick question, could you just remind me what the overall budget is that we're looking at for this project?
So we're looking at a $7 million budget. The architects are currently fine-tuning the budget based on the stone and all of these various decisions. So that's why I'm saying estimated. It's a 7,800 square foot addition.
Okay. Did anybody ever talk about how much more expensive it would be to build up? Is it an order of magnitude that's exponential, or?
That was considered a few iterations ago, I thought. I remember seeing plans for
I
that.
have a vague recollection of discussing that. I'm just trying to remember what
Yeah.
the approximate.
Of going up over adult
Ballpark.
services here.
Not going
There
over the adult services, but in the front building
yes.
above,
Yes,
so taking it and just,
I believe it was an L-shaped addition,
well, there was that also.
and it was
I
two
think we did at
stories.
one point talk about going over adult services over the 1970s edition.
Oh, I thought, we always heard about the pillars and the lack of strength in the pillars, and if they had to reinforce the pillars, it would be a
Right.
prohibitive cost.
Okay.
And that's why we then said, hey, what if we get this space to the east? Then that'll at least give you that connectivity through the adult services, and then the ability to build over there.
Yeah, I think for our purposes today, I don't need that information, but if I can follow up and get that at some point.
I think somewhere in the notes, somewhere we have some conversation about
I seem to recall that.
the
yeah.
insufficiency of the pillars and the corners and the stairs and the
Mhm.
whole 9 yards, that you couldn't put in the reinforcements and have the emergency stairs where they were, if that, I might be not quite remembering,
Yeah,
but,
if I can jump in a second, I think that the discussion was that it couldn't structurally be above the adult services section, and the previous iteration was an L-shaped addition that was a two-story addition that was
right,
in that corner,
where all the water goes.
kind of adjacent to the, I can't point because I'm not there, but.
I'm pointing for you.
It was kind of on
The zone nine?
southeast corner.
Mhm.
I think that was discussed, and I think it was a much smaller addition than what's being discussed now.
Right.
Southwest corner, I think, Kim,
Yeah.
because that's
Just
what
The southeast corner adjacent to youth services, and adjacent to the auditorium, but the other problem with that was the water situation in the
oh, I
basement.
got it.
Yeah,
That's where I like Southwest.
but I think, the comments about the flatness to the facade, I'm curious to know, Yumi, what your thoughts are about that.
I have, to me, that makes it more modern. I mean, I agree, I said it to Heidi after that meeting, that any effort to make it look, exactly like what's existing is, and that's before I heard what the architect was going to say about that, was
Uh-huh.
going to look bad, I
Okay,
thought.
the cobbled together.
Yeah, and she said that's exactly what, the architect said. I don't mind, I guess to me, a clean, I would ideally have liked, but I very much know that I wouldn't have support for this, at least on council, a more modern-looking addition, because I think most libraries, either when they're built new or added on to, are more modern-looking.
Right, if you think about
signals-
Glenview and Deerfield, that's
it-
exactly
it
the direction.
signals and
that
it
they went.
reflects the modernness of what's going on inside. It,
Right.
libraries today are not
Zion
antiquated
did the same
things. They're providing a lot of state-of-the-art services, and to me, I want the outside to reflect that.
Up to you.
But, so I don't mind a cleaner, simple look to it. That's me personally. I also was interesting to hear at the board meeting about the comparisons, they shared numbers from other communities in terms of circulation, in terms of visits, and I know that, I share that because I know that it's clear that the library wants to expand what it's offering. We want to increase visits, we want to increase circulation. You'd be surprised because I would have thought that it was a well-visited library, but we need to make change. Yeah.
And it's the most visited building in the city as it is, so,
Yeah.
yeah, what were we gonna say?
Can we go up to the, I think it's the north perspective? So that little rounded, to your point, Tony?
The bay window there?
Yeah, the bay window. What if instead of the door being recessed, it was a bay window kind of an area? It wouldn't be as flat. I do agree it might pop out too much, but I do think, I agree with you, it'd be, I don't like modern, and I apologize, but, you know, I think once you see clean stone and nice windows, you know it's been redone and it's modern. So I don't think that's who we are as a town. And if anything, I'm so glad that addition from the 70s is to the east, so we don't have to look at it when we go up and down St. John's.
But it's awesome to be inside of.
It's awesome to be inside of it, but when you're driving by, and again, when I think of us as our front lawn, whether that's City Hall or the library, that's what I think of, especially since you've got the train on the other side, so you turn your head the other way. But in any event, I don't know what that type of cost is or whatever, but I just think it would make it more interesting to have that kind of a.
Detail? Tony?
Yeah, I understand what we're talking about in terms of being a clean look. I tend to associate that with modern architecture, and I agree that's an option. I'm not sure that I would support a completely modern face, but this just, I hate to use the word, but it seems bland. Not just
Better than when they had
plain.
smooth stone on it, and I don't know if you saw that in
Yeah.
Relation, but that was what the
Yeah,
group
I
responded
mean,
to.
if you could turn the two windows to create some detail around the windows, either making those bay windows or adding some detail to the eaves of the building. It doesn't have to, it shouldn't, for the reasons that Councilmember Ross has explained and that you've heard, I would not want to try to match the existing building. But if you're, because you won't. But if you're going to go for that look, I think you can at least add detail with it to give it a closer association of that period and style.
Kim?
Thanks. I like the clean look and not matching exactly, but matching some of the details. So the window sizes and the rhythm of the windows matches the existing building. And it's the same type of stone, but a little different texture so that it doesn't look like we've tried to match and failed. My house was built in 1899, as I think I've mentioned many times before. We've got an addition on our house, and we were very careful to make sure also to have the windows match the existing and have some of those features so that it pulls together, but you could tell that it's a new addition. And I think that is a look that works well. Highland Park is known for its architecture, and we have a really nice mix of architectural styles, so having it look a little bit more modern, but modern in keeping with the existing building, to me makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Joel?
Just one other thing, just, I know that you're gonna be preparing for PDC and you've done a lot already, so you're well on your way. Material boards and things like that, color palettes, things like that will be needed as well. And then, you know, all faces, all sides, you know, where you have your renderings are important. I noticed on this side of the building though, what portion of the building is the existing building in this view?
None.
Exactly. No, and the reason I said that for a point, because I understand people are worried about how it will look mixing in with another building, but there is no other building face here. It's all new. So then the other side of the building on the north face, that's where there's the mix of the two.
Yeah,
And so there'll be a lot of looking at that aspect of things too from the Plan and Design Commission standpoint, that side of the building. So it might It might be good, I would say, to have the rendering a little bit further down the street instead of axon, it's well, not axonometric, but kind of on this angle, which is an important one, but also important to take a look at it from the opposite angle from the other way as well.
Add that.
I said, we wish our architects were here to explain how they have tried to capture parts of the old building and what the expansion is. You can kind of see a little bit here on the roof lines and the slope, how they, as we call them, the bookends, from the old building to the new building, and again on the side facing west. So they put a lot of thought into it, and as you said, we really took into account our community, which tends to prefer the older style of architecture. Be assured that when you go in, it will be very modern and look
Sure.
fabulous.
Regardless
So-
of that, yeah. And then in terms of the roofing materials, is it going to be a complete re-roof job to make everything the same or no?
No.
Okay, all right.
So
That's
right-
going to be tricky, yeah.
Right now, we have multiple roof types currently.
I know.
So it will be a process. Now, I will say, I just reviewed when the roofs are due for replacement, and it looks like all within the 5 years following the project. So if we have to phase in, maybe that's an opportunity for discussion.
Again, I just raised it because I'm sure those are the details that get looked at with regard to that, because a lot of times it's very, the roofing materials, it's great if you could redo the roof, because then it's all the same materials. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right, right.
Okay.
Pulls it all together.
Same age, same fading, that would
Right.
be
Yes,
not an
Tony?
issue.
Why is the center section not at all
Yeah.
matched to the two outer sections in materials or architectural style?
Yeah, great
I
question.
mean,
I
that's the
really
worst
don't
part
like
to
it.
me.
I agree with you. I don't like it at all, that middle part.
Which is facing out to everybody.
So if our architects were with us, I'm sure they could speak much more eloquently
Okay.
than me. But I will share that hearing from them, these were viewed as transition locations. And there's one here,
It's a small one though,
very small, here, very visible,
right?
and then here on the back side, to Councilmember Bloomberg's point, this is, yes, out of the way, but it's another one of those, they're calling these, they referred to them as quiet transitions. And we're very happy to share the feedback with the board and with the architects that they don't feel very quiet.
I think
They're
you're,
drawing your eye, it sounds
Yeah.
like. So we can come back and look at what expressions would do a better job.
Right.
Thanks.
Yep.
yeah, just one other one. Can you go back again to the west? So to, Joel's point, I don't know if I could say that, but to Joel's point, I completely agree. When you're looking at a whole different face, it's not like we're trying to match, because you don't see the two at the same time.
Right.
You don't see the west and the north at the same time. And so the bay window, even though it won't be the same, and the size of this transition space here is much wider than the size on the north part. And that's why it bothers my eye more, to your point, Tony. So if it's wider, maybe instead of maybe it's a small transition where the doors are, and the other part is more of a bay window or something different or more interesting to your part. So I think
Mechanicals, right?
Yeah, but we'll figure
again,
it out.
I mean, I have to tell you honestly, and I was kind of driving you nuts about the west because it was marked something else before.
East, yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of it is wonderful. It is what it is. The west is really the centerpiece of our town.
Right.
And just like with City Hall drawing you in, I love that they sort of mirror one another in terms of the color of the stone. And so it does trouble me deeply, again, to lose that green because it's so majestic to have it that way. So I don't know, I'd work on it, have a little with the architects.
Joel.
One other thing, there'll be other discussion about the access points and the sidewalks, and so like thinking of desire lines, like that corner, is there maybe a good diagonally to get to the front door that already exists? this way? And then how does this interact with the parking lot across the street? Is this gonna just encourage mid-block crossings, which are dangerous? How are you gonna make sure that people it's hard, you know, and then just keep in mind also, like, for the renderings, if you want to put wherever you have egress doors, you're gonna have landings. You need to have concrete landings, so you just, folks don't go out on the grass, right? So you're gonna want to show that too, and then where sidewalks might match up and others to connect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree about the point about encouraging mid-block crossing. And I, again, think that if you feel that that walkway has to exist, that it be minimized in color and size, and the primary circulation should be along a pathway that goes alongside the building. And then, again, to the north, yeah, I really want to emphasize that kind of looks pretty bad, that little the connecting piece, it really, really needs to be recessed. And, you know, and really kind of emphasize, yeah, that I've already spoken to that, but
Thank you.
I think that it should be clear, honestly, what is sort of imply, you know, what's new and what's old or existing. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Very helpful feedback. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for the opportunity. We appreciate it, and please keep us posted.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to my thank you slide.
I just also want to say, I mean, I know I speak for everybody, or everybody's already said it. I know you've put so much effort and time into this. Thank you so much for your hard work. I wanted to say that.
Very much. Thank you.
you.
Excellent. Okay. Do we have any other matters? I don't think we do. Nope. Okay. So I'm seeking a motion to adjourn committee of the whole.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, so we will be city counciling at 7:30, and then closed session will be attached to city council meeting.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Rita, will you call me back?
Yes, I will, like 7:20, is that all right?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. It's right now. Or 6:45.
Excellent, thanks.
So we have all this time for dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took off my sunglasses.